Hello and welcome to KZSC Santa Cruz. This is special rent control debate on Measure M, which will be a city charter amendment on the November ballot. I am Dan Wu, reminding you that as a non-commercial educational radio station, KZSC supports free expression of ideas. Please be aware that the opinions expressed are those of the speakers or artists only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the UC Region's KZSC staff, management, or underwriters. We welcome your feedback on our programming. Please direct your comments to the Program Review Committee by calling 831-459-4726 or by email at prc@kzsc.org. Also, I am bound at this moment to not be racist or homophobic or classist by Do Make Say Think, because that was their condition for letting me use this song as the theme music, which is the track 1978. I feel like I usually live up to that, so therefore I use their music, and I really appreciate that coming from them. And like I said, this is Talkabout. This is a special edition. I'm guest hosting. And full disclosure, as a Santa Cruz resident for 32 and a half years, I believe, my mother could maybe correct me on that, and from a family who's lived here for a number of years before that, I have some strong pit effects in my stomach going into this Measure M debate. But 831-459-4036 if you would like to share your views on this issue that is on the November ballot. And the first segment is consisting of Keshav Kumar, who's the internal vice president at UC Santa Cruz, going into his third year here at the university from the Mount Shasta area originally. He is here representing Santa Cruz Together. And we also have Zav Hershfield, who is here representing the Movement for Housing Justice. And I'm just going to get into it and let you on the mic because I've already delayed that by 7 minutes with announcements. We had a process of picking who would go first, and that fell on to Keshav, whether he feels that's a victory or not. Give you a chance right now to give your opening statement, let's say under 2 minutes, on the viewpoint Santa Cruz Together has on Measure M, which is a rent control ordinance on the ballot for Santa Cruz City in November.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. I want to clarify a couple of things before I get started. First of which is that I am not in my role as Vice President of Internal Affairs right now. I am a representative for Santa Cruz Together, so my views are that of a, I suppose, private concerned citizen, and I wanted to make that wholly clear to all audiences who may be listening. Second is a bit more minor, but almost had it. It's Keshav. That's generally what I prefer.
Nice. Thank you for that.
Of course. So I just want to begin by saying that everybody in this room and just about everybody in the community is in agreement that Santa Cruz has a housing crisis. Santa Cruz also has an affordable housing crisis. The issue comes in when you begin to go into what the solution really is. And so Santa Cruz Together as an organization opposes ballot Measure M, which will be on the ballot for the November 6th election. And the motivation behind that is that we are a local group with local funding who genuinely believe that Measure M is not going to be the best solution for the community. In fact, Measure M seems to be a Band-Aid solution that doesn't necessarily solve the issues of the housing crisis, which I hope to discuss tonight. And so I will be going through the policy points, academic studies, and viewpoints of those who live in the community, hoping to give KZSC listeners a bit more perspective on our group and our opinions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And same to Zav Hershfield here with, if I'm correct, the Movement for Housing Justice. How's it going tonight, Zav?
It's going good. Thanks for having us on here tonight.
Cool. And just in a little bit less than 2 minutes again, what would be your opening statement about Measure M, again, the rent control and housing-related initiative on the Santa Cruz City November ballot?
Well, I would say that rent control is a proven policy tool that's been shown to keep people in the homes that they've lived in for many, many years across the state of California and in other cities in the United States and other cities in the world. It's a necessary tool for the housing crisis that we're facing. I won't deny that it's not a magic bullet and it's not going to solve the housing crisis. There are other things that we need to do, but I say that it's part of an overall strategy of keeping communities that are currently struggling to even stay where they live in those homes so they can actually benefit from the additional policy choices we need to make in order to make the community livable for them. I would also like to present my own correction. I think that my opponent here misspoke when he said that Santa Cruz Together is a local organization. They are presented with close to $400,000 in support funds through a front organization originally called Santa Cruz Community Against Costly Initiatives, I believe. I got one of those wrong. They're receiving close to $400,000 in funding from the California Apartment Association, the California Association of Realtors, and the National Association of Realtors. So just want to, enter my own correction there. We are a real grassroots organization, and we are here to keep people in the homes that they live in.
One question I would pose there, I guess I would give you maybe 20 seconds to respond to that if you would like to, Keshav. You don't have to if you don't want to.
Sure. Look at the FPPC filings and look to the campaign team working on Santa Cruz Together. Our primary campaign team is local renters, the whole lot of us, and we genuinely believe we are doing what's best for this community. I am not a corporate transplant in any way. I am a student at this university, and I wholeheartedly think that claim has no standing ground.
And I guess on a similar note, the Santa Cruz Together related points, I guess someone who says they're not associated directly with Santa Cruz Together, who's going to be on later, who's been asking some serious questions about Measure M, brought up the fact that, as they said, a Berkeley-based lawyer helped with the writing of Measure M. What would you say to that, Zav?
Well, it's true. We did have legal assistance from someone with a lot of experience in rent control. Our policy as written, our proposed policy as written, is substantially similar to rent control policies around the state. We wanted to make sure that the law we were using was already legal, that we weren't going to put something up that was going to be challenged in court and shot down. And so for that reason, we did consult with lawyers who have expertise in rent control from other areas of the state.
Now, some in Santa Cruz Together have criticized the way this bill was put together, whereas people I know that are involved with the Movement for Housing Justice will say that they based a lot of this bill on Richmond rent control legislation that passed a couple years ago and was challenged by landlords, and that challenge for the time being has been shot down, and currently those rent control measures are in place in Richmond. Santa Cruz Together, on the other hand, Keshav, has been saying that this bill, Measure M, is an amalgamation of the most draconian of rent control. How do you feel about the pieces of legislation this was based on, and what are the things that Santa Cruz Together has the most issue with?
Thank you so much. How much time do I have to respond?
Let's say 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think the number one thing that I would like to address is that I believe that this Measure M, and Santa Cruz Together believes that this is the most extreme form of rent control seen thus far. And that's why it has become such a hot button November campaign issue. The reason being, we even have someone as credible as Mike Rotkin saying that it's the most extreme form of rent control he's ever seen. And this is a 5-time mayor of Santa Cruz and a professor of community studies on campus. So that gives you an indication as to, I suppose, the nature of the policies that are being used. And some of the largest points that we tend to focus on when we are campaigning against Measure M is, things that will be very, very noticeable to mom and pop landlords. Those include the 6-month relocation fees. And so those 6-month relocation fees are not based upon the rent that the tenant was paying to said landlord. It's actually based on, market decided rent. And at first glance, you may think, well, most of the time landlords are charging that or above if you look to the Movement for Housing Justice's stances. But in reality, a lot of mom and pop landlords don't charge market rate. In fact, they charge below that. And so there's been an argument from Yes on M advocates that for landlords who are good to their tenants, this won't hurt them in any way. We think that this is, not the case, because if you are in fact charging less than market-based rent and you are put in a position where you need to pay relocation fees, then you're paying significantly more than was paid to you in rent. So that already poses an issue. We've also never seen rent control that was targeted at accessory dwelling units or ADUs. And you're put into a position now that on your property, you could have someone living there in an ADU that you've installed, and you will have to go through, a significant battle with the rent board, or you'll have to, go through the just cause provisions put in Measure M to actually get them off of your property, which is difficult to do, and at the same time can become disastrous if you feel like your safety may be at stake. There's quite a few protections for that. And this also applies to single-family homes. Berkeley and Santa Monica rent control do not. And so that's something that...
It, in fact, does not apply to single-family homes because that's prohibited by the Costa-Hawkins Act. It would only apply to single-family homes if
created
the statewide
before
proposition...
1995.
No, absolutely not. Single-family homes would be exempted from this legislation, and apartments, duplexes, and multi-unit housing after 1995 is exempted. But all single-family homes are exempted, and ADUs are exempted if the owner lives on the property.
Thank you for the clarification. I'll look into that.
It's illegal by state law right now to impose rent control on any single-family homes.
Costa-Hawkins.
Yes. Yeah. Would you like to... I can give this to Zav to... I guess when people are saying that this is draconian or extreme, what is Movement for Housing Justice's response to that?
I think that those are particular ways of framing the Santa Cruz Together's political speech in order to scare people. I do not believe that these provisions are extreme. For example, just cause for eviction protections and someone living on your property. What is that about? This is about having a legal process to deprive someone of the home they live in. That's why we need eviction protections. When you're talking about just cause for eviction, you need to consider the current protections that tenants have in California, which are quite minimal for eviction. However, if a tenant does something, say threatening or breaking law under current California law, they can be given, or they break the lease, they can be given a 3-day notice to quit the property, which basically means the landlord needs to have them out in 3 days, or they'll take them to court to evict them. So that's current law. Just cause for eviction protections under Measure M would expand protections for tenants so that a landlord needs specific reasons to ask them to leave. If a tenant's doing something threatening, or if a tenant is doing something that's violating the terms of their lease, or if they're doing something illegal, they can still be served a 3-day notice to quit under Measure M. So I'm not sure what the safety concerns are. I feel for people who do not want to be living with someone on their property that they don't feel safe with. But I can tell you that the just cause for eviction protections don't substantively change the requirements for evicting someone who's doing something illegal on your property.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Keshav, I'll give you a chance if you want to respond to that. My next question is about just cause evictions, though. That has been something that Santa Cruz Together and other critics, whether or not, we want to tag it to them specifically, but there's many other people outside of Movement for Housing Justice and outside of Santa Cruz Together having these conversations. What would your perspective be on the just cause eviction requirements in Measure M?
So just cause eviction provisions prevent using the end of a lease to change problem renters, even after parties, trash, too many cars, and disturbing next-door neighbors, which don't necessarily have to, pertain to legal consequences. Problem renters are few and far between, but it only takes one permanent, let's say, party house to affect an area and disturb nearby neighbors and homeowners. Measure M allows evictions for nuisances for those disturbing people on the same property, the same parcel, but has no protections for problems next door or across the street. Provisions intended to help low-income, older people, families, and people with disabilities will completely backfire and create a disincentive to rent to these groups. Since there's going to be significantly more competition for rentals, it's going to become easier to select renters that are not families, older people, or even disabled folks.
And what would you like to see in the just cause evictions that is not in law right now? Because right now there are some just cause eviction laws, but they are hard to prove whether or not a landlord... You can't just be a private investigator on private citizens, essentially. Like if a landlord tells you have to move out, many tenants don't have the chance to go back and check up on whether that was the actual reason. Is there anything in the just eviction requirements that Movement for Housing Justice would like to see that is not there?
Well, thank you for that question. I can't really speak for the organization in terms of more reasons that we'd like to see in our just cause provisions. I will say that I think that we have a pretty good law and good protections in place. I do want to, and I have something I want to mention, but I want to address something that my colleague over here said real quick.
I guess to rephrase my question is, if the just cause eviction requirements do some of them do exist on the books today, but they're harder, why are they included so prominently in Measure M, I guess, is a better way of me phrasing what I meant to say.
So we don't have a permanent just cause for eviction law in the city of Santa Cruz. We have a temporary one right now. And what that does is that we have two kinds of reasons why someone is allowed to be evicted from their home. And this law only lasts until the election this November. Unless we pass Measure M, these protections are extended. So currently there's two categories of reasons why someone can be asked to leave their home. There's at-fault just causes and there's no-fault just causes. Now, for an at-fault just cause, this is a situation where someone didn't pay the rent, or they're destroying or damaging the property, they're causing a nuisance, they're doing something illegal on the property. To what my opponent here said about someone in a party house not being able to be evicted, that's actually not true. If you repeatedly violate Santa Cruz the noise ordinance of the city of Santa Cruz, that's an illegal use of the property. I think that I'm not an attorney, but I think that there may be a case being made for you being able to be evicted for repeated illegal usage of a property.
All right, I'm going to address one text message we got. I'm going to address one text message with the mic on that we received. Measure M, a caller texted in that Measure M does in fact apply just cause eviction restrictions to ADUs. The temporary freeze being enforced now does not apply to ADUs. I've read Measure M and I did not interpret it that way. However, it is a law. And so maybe I've read it a couple times now. We did have a caller just a minute ago. The phone lines are now open and I'm happy to get people on the air. so I don't have to just read their text messages and get other voices in this conversation. That is something that everyone should look into now. We do have a caller coming in. I think that we're just going to go with this call and see what this community member wants to say. Hello, you're on Talkabout.
Hi. Yes, about the party house. My name is Cynthia, calling from Santa Cruz. The landlord, I helped to write the ordinance. The landlord can write into their lease that if a tenant breaks the party house law of the City of Santa Cruz or the noise ordinance of the City of Santa Cruz, there are two of them, and the landlord can put right in their lease, if you break either one of those, and that means a neighbor reports them and a cop goes over there and tickets them. So not only the people in the house can report them, if they break that law, then they may be evicted. And so I just wanted to really clarify that's exactly what it means.
Okay, Keshav, would you like to respond to that? Thank you so much for the call. We're going to open up the lines here for the next person that wants to call in, because we've missed a couple, and I want to get in as many other voices as I can.
Thank you for the call. I think that I'd like to respond with saying that while that can sound great, the reality of it is the majority of party houses are not caught, and that's what makes them viable party houses. Yes, you can get a noise violation. Yes, you can be put on the blacklist in the City of Santa Cruz, but I would like to point out that using measures that many party houses do use in the City of Santa Cruz, that they avoid the police presence, they avoid neighbors coming over, and they push to make sure that they have soundproofing, and they push to make sure that their house is not blacklisted.
I have a question just as a citizen of anywhere, a resident of anywhere, is that wouldn't that be the definition of a good party house, is the fact that they don't have noise complaints because they do soundproof their spot? Like, this is a serious question, like, is your point of view that there shouldn't be houses that throw parties, especially if they soundproof the place and they avoid a police presence? It's not like they're doing that through corruption, like paying off the police. You're saying not caught. I always think of a party house, a problem party house. Trust me, I'm bothered by people when I want to sleep too, as actually creating a noise disturbance. So how are you defining a party house, I guess?
I'd like to push back a little bit and say I think we're getting a little bit off subject, but I would like to respond, and I would like to say that speaking from the perspective, and obviously I don't hold this perspective, but imagine the perspective of a landlord. The party house to them means that the quality of their house is going down incrementally every Friday and Saturday, sometimes every Thursday. That's what I'm trying to reference here, is the fact that if the party house is not caught, then the quality of the house can still be destroyed by parties, which generally they do.
Thank you for that clarification. I wasn't trying to heckle. I really just wanted a clarification on that. And Zav, you have a thought on this matter or something related?
Yeah. I just want to refer again to the just cause provisions.
1 second, actually. And we do have a caller on hold, so we're going to do this in like 30 seconds, and then we'll get to the caller. I just want to let them know that. Yeah.
So, I just want to refer to the just cause provisions again. If a tenant is damaging the premises that they're renting, that's a just cause for eviction. That's a 3-day notice to stop damaging the premises or leave. I also do want to say I agree we're getting a bit off topic here. When we're talking about evictions, the issue is not party houses. The issue is people being able to keep a roof over their heads. So I would hope that we should continue the conversation in a more important light and recognize that what we're talking about is people being able to stay housed, not necessarily their loudness.
All right, and we're going to get to this caller, Frederick in Santa Cruz. You're on the air on Talkabout.
Okay, thank you. This is Frederick from Santa Cruz, and I have a question for both your guests, and it concerns the writer to the Sentinel concerning the unintended consequences of Measure M.
Oh, no.
And what the question is that think of yourself as a landlord, and think of yourself as Measure M passes. Measure M passes, and rent control is in control. And think of the larger number of transfer students at UCSC coming in this year, a much larger number. And that, as a landlord, who would you prefer? Because students become basically transient tenants. They're only here for 1 to 3 years. And the students would be a much preferred tenant than a permanent tenant citizen living within the city of Santa Cruz, because the just cause evictions will probably not apply except for those party house rules. Those party house rules are party house rules can be very problematic. But other than that, the student is your ideal tenant because he's going to become a transient tenant, and you're not going to have a lot of problems with the students, and they're going to pay their rent. Could I have a comment on that?
Yeah, Keshav, you wanted to say something?
Sure. Going past the claim about the transfer students, because I think there is some truth to that, but not necessarily this year. UC Santa Cruz is chasing the funding formula for more funding that comes from attracting more transfer students.
But there is actually, I want to put in there that there is a freeze on the increase of students coming in this 1 year. This class, there are students coming in, but it is not more than last year, which is the first year in a while that they've capped it at the previous year. Frederick, in other years, you're totally right that the number does increase. This year, there is a freeze on it. But go ahead, Keshav.
And yeah, I would like to respond to that, because that is something that I referenced in my introduction, where competition is going to get extremely high as soon as, if rent control is to pass, then the competition will become stiff, and it won't necessarily be students competing against other students. You'll have a group of students who makes the promise that they are going to only be living there for 1 to 2 years until they graduate, and then they will be out of the house. And you have, these students competing against someone who is attempting to stay in the community as long as they can and build a career there. And as a landlord, if Measure M passes, you feel much more inclined to rent to the student. So thank you for your comment.
Thank you very much, Frederick. We're going to open up the lines here again. And Zav, I want a comment from you on that topic as far as the competition currently and in a hypothetical Measure M world of students versus people living here that have lived here a long time, people moving to the area to be professional, whatever they do. How do you see that in a hypothetical Measure M enforced Santa Cruz?
I won't deny that there's definitely a lot of students here and not enough housing for everybody. But I think it's a misnomer to say that students are necessarily the competitors with long-term renters here. I think students are an integral part of the community at this point, and the university's not really going anywhere. So I think that there is already competition here. There's already fierce competition in the city of Santa Cruz for housing, and students do take up a lot of that. But my concern is really with keeping people who currently live in their homes in their homes. I think that the bulk of them will be leaving over the course of the next few years if rent control does not pass. If you're a low-income renter in the city of Santa Cruz, or even a middle-income renter at this point, if you're a teacher, if you're a nurse, if you're a bus driver, if you're a dishwasher, and you're currently renting in this city, unless we pass rent control, I don't think that the bulk of those people are going to be able to stay in the homes that they currently live in. And that's why we need rent control, is because if we don't pass it, the competition that already exists will continue to be fierce, and rents will just simply continue to increase at the rate they have.
Okay, so you had a response?
I just have a short response. This is also something I should have clarified in the beginning. In no way am I against the concept of rent control. I am against Measure M. What I do want to say is that the Santa Cruz City Council is on September 11th doing a first reading of the exorbitant rent increase ordinance, different than the city charter, which will be putting in place a form of rent control.
Is that the one triggering relocation assistance that Ryan Coonerty, county supervisor, has spoken about hypothetically?
So that's at the...
I actually don't know this reading, so yeah.
So this is strictly at the city council level, and they have, released from housing plans, information about it, but the first reading and the most information will be available at the September 11th City Council meeting. And so I would like to say that rent control, by all means, should be considered by a community that's going through an affordable housing crisis, but in a form that is somewhat reasonable to both homeowners and landlords as well as tenants and renters. And so I think that's important to note that there are alternative solutions. That's just one of them.
And I just want to put this out as food for thought, but this is something that's happening in a lot of other places. Santa Cruz does have the distinction of being a small community with a fairly large university here. But rent for long-term tenants is squeezing out people all over the country in the economic centers of the country, and especially here in the Bay Area. UCSC isn't causing rents to skyrocket in Marin. UCSC is not causing Los Gatos to sell homes for $3 million. And I would like to get both of your responses to that. However, I want to let Eric in Santa Cruz have 30 seconds here. He's been waiting on the phone. Eric, real quick, what's up?
30 seconds. I have to talk quickly. What Cynthia Burgess said earlier was total hogwash. It's written right in the measure that the nuisance only applies to other residents of the property. So what she said was totally speculative. You would have to bring a nuisance eviction and hope that the rent board and the courts said it did not violate the rent control ordinance. However, the other thing I wanted to say was you guys were wrong. The Section 5 applies the just cause eviction provision to all properties, single-family homes, ADUs, duplexes, everything. It's not limited by Costa-Hawkins. It's only the rent control portion that's limited by Costa-Hawkins. Furthermore...
okay. Go on.
Well, I heard something else earlier, and I want to make it really clear, because it's the just cause eviction portion, not the rent control portion, that is objectionable to mom-and-pop landlords. Mom-and-pop landlords are worried about the things what Keshav has stated already. It's dealing with, you don't understand. If you guys are good people, good renters, the majority of renters are. It's the one in 10 that's problematic, and it's not just for the landlord. It's for the other residents of the property. And when you put these barriers in place, you make it tenants already do have protections, okay? And I get the thing about the rent.
Okay.
And I think there's lots of ways without these draconian just cause evictions to prevent jacking up rents. And this is the problem with Measure M. So it's not rent control in the abstract that's the problem. And that's how the MHJ is framing it. Like, oh, are you for rent control?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm for rent control, but I'm not for Measure M because the just cause eviction provisions are so severe. One quick example. I know you only give me 30 seconds.
Yeah, you're over, but I'm letting you go.
Hang on. I'll make it real quick, okay? You're a homeowner. You're not even a landlord. You just own one home. You want to go to France for business for a year. Okay, so you rent your home for 12 months. Fine, you can get back into your home. You rent it out for 12 months. You're gone for 12 months, and one day you can't get back into your own home because of this measure. Measure M is so extreme. There is no other municipality in California, probably the whole country, that has these crazy provisions, and it's way overreach because they didn't reach out to all stakeholders in this. So
okay. I would just wonder, I have not heard, thank you so much for the call there, Eric, and I still disagree on portions of it, of what you said, based on my reading of it. Like I said, laws get interpreted, they get challenged, people have arguments after laws and charters are amended, and I'm open to hearing these arguments, absolutely, and I may have misunderstood part of it, but it is interesting, Keshav, is that a lot of people now are saying, oh, they're okay with limits on rent, but that's not what I'm hearing from landlords and realtors that I've talked to. I had lunch with one of my best friends in the whole world. She's like my sister, and she's a real estate agent currently. And she and her real estate friends are not in favor of any limits, and they're local real estate agents. I have not talked to any real estate agents other than on this show today saying that they're okay with some government agency of some sort limiting rent increases. And that's what I've heard from 2 or 3 people, yourself and this caller now, Are you guys okay with a law that said rents can only go up a certain amount each year?
To a reasonable extent, yes, we are. And I think that it's an important distinction to make. Santa Cruz Together, and the reason that I cited it as being a local group, kind of goes against the grain. This is not an organization that is bent on making sure that any sort of rent control does not see a day in the sun. What we want to make sure is that, as the caller had said, every community stakeholder is involved in the conversation when it comes to finding a solution for affordable housing in Santa Cruz.
Thank you. And Zav, you had a response to Eric as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I believe what Cynthia was saying was that you, as a landlord, you can write a provision into your lease that says if this law is violated repeatedly or even once, then that is a cause for eviction. That can be written into the law because one segment of the just cause section of the law is violation of lease terms is a reasonable choice to cite for why a tenant can be.
Are you saying that is in the law by your interpretation, or are you saying it can be written into the law?
It can be written into your lease if that's a specific thing. I had one other thing that I wanted to say about just cause. I just want to remind people these protections are in place because we are talking about making people leave their homes. We talked a little bit about the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act, which Proposition 10 will address in November. And there's an aspect of the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act that is called vacancy decontrol. And what it means is that if someone leaves a rent-controlled apartment, then the rent control goes away and the landlord can set the price to whatever they want. And so the reason we have just cause provisions in every substantive rent control law in the state of California is to prevent abusive evictions, is to prevent landlords jumping through that loophole.
Okay, and Keshav, if you wanted to get in there.
Yeah, I just want to throw in there something that I heard at the beginning of Zav's statement, which is that, the goal is to keep renters in their homes. And I think that something important that I haven't necessarily touched on yet, and I think that as a segment we need to touch on, is the fact that Measure M, from the perspective of looking at both Santa Monica and Berkeley's actual rent control effects, will most likely, and this is in contrast to what Zav said earlier, push out landlords rather than renters. So I understand that the goal is to keep renters.
What do you mean by push out landlords?
Thank you. I understand that the goal is to keep renters in their homes, but there has to be an understanding that home providers, landlords, whatever title you want to use for them, have to feel some sort of incentive to stay in Santa Cruz. And so when you have flustered mom and pop landlords who are saying there's no way I can justify this to myself, then you're reaching a point where rentals start to leave the market.
And closing arguments here, getting to the end of this segment. Zav, yourself first. I am going to hold you guys to strict 45 seconds here, but closing arguments, what you want to leave the audience with at the moment.
I agree that landlords need an incentive to stay here. I would like there to still be rental housing for people who can't afford to buy here to be available, which is why I think that if you're a landlord now and you're able to set rent prices to a profitable level, which you can, then you should keep the home that you're renting, and you should continue to rent it to people and increase the rent in line with inflation like other common necessary goods for human life. There's a provision of the law called the Maintenance of Net Operating Income that allows you to petition the rent board to recover necessary business expenses if it's becoming expensive for you. So you're going to be able to keep your living.
And Keshav?
There are alternatives to Measure M that I believe are significantly better, and other community members believe are significantly better. If we are to look past Measure M, look to the exorbitant rent increase ordinance that's being considered by the city, and even look towards affordable housing projects that are going to be reaching the city council for approval, then we see that there's actually quite a bit of work being done that's long-term rather than short-term. yes, you can say all you want that Measure M is going to be part of the solution, but truly, if we don't have all of the community involved, it won't be able to. And so I want to look towards solutions that are actually for the entire community rather than a small segment of it.
And 10 seconds, Keshav, first, where would you direct people to get information that for causes that you support related to this, or places that they should look for information?
Please visit SantaCruzTogether.com or the Santa Cruz Together Facebook page for more information, or feel free to personally reach out to myself. Thank you so much.
And Zav, 10 seconds, where would you like people to go for information on this issue?
Movement for Housing Justice has a website. You can look us up on Google, movementforhousingjustice.org. And we also have a Facebook group. Search Santa Cruz Rent Control, and you should be able to find us. Phone number 831-471-7842.
Awesome. And in the spirit of letting the community speak on this issue, because this is what this is also about, we're going to give Viveka the last word here before the break. Caller, you got 30 seconds for real. I won't let you go further than that. Hello, Viveka.
Okay. Hi, I'm Viveka, and I'm someone that just got displaced from Santa Cruz for the second time. And I wanted to talk about what it's like to search for housing with a disability in this rental market. And I mean, I heard Keshav say earlier that, this is going to increase the incentives for landlords to discriminate against disabled folks. And I mean, my experience, there's already like super rampant discrimination. And I just don't see how codifying my rights is somehow going to, because it seems to be a choice between either not having my rights written down and enforced, or not having rights and just praying that landlords will be nice to me and
Thank you, Viveka.
that is the 30. So I just would like to hear your callers speak to that issue.
Thank you very much. I'm too nice of a host. I can't stick to time limits with anybody. But we'll be back in a few minutes with Mark Premack and Stacy from Movement for Housing Justice. Thank you so much for Keshav Kumar and Zav Hershfield for being in the station. This will continue, I'm sure. We'll be back in a minute with Talkabout, Rent Control Debate, Measure M.